today in Rich in Relationship. We're going to talk about, are men being kept because they're a little screen addicted? Is there a relationship between screens and man keeping? Is what more and more men are growing up, so are women. More and more people are growing up with screens in their lives. We were not born on this earth to live digitally. Welcome to another episode of Rich in Relationship, and I'm your host, Rich Heller, and today we're talking about gaming nights to man-keeping fights. And Martha says, my boyfriend can spend 5 straight hours on PlayStation, but he can't seem to figure out whether it's date night or not. Martha's got a complaint that a lot of women today have, and that is that their men, their husbands, their boyfriends, seem to be more and more distracted and less invested in the day-to-day management of relationships in the household. And the question is there a relationship between this and screens? Well, look, let's start here. More and more men are growing up, so are women. More and more people are growing up with screens in their lives. More and more people are learning to entertain themselves, not just through Netflix and Prime and HBO, but they're learning to amuse themselves through social media and through gaming. Here's a statistic you might want to consider. That is that 80% of 18 to 34-year-old men game an average of 7 to 20 hours a week. And the average age of the male gamer today is 34. That is a big leap from before there were computers, before there were screens. That is a big leap even from 10 or 15 years ago. Now, no one has done a study, a firm study to show that gaming is leading to lower development or maturity or engagement or involvement in men, right? That's basically the accusation of man-keeping. The accusation of man-keeping, and we're getting ready to launch a whole series on man-keeping. The accusation of man-keeping is that men just aren't stepping up to the plate, either can't or won't step up to the plate when it comes to emotional connection and relationships, not just with their partner, but with their families. And they're not stepping up to the plate when it comes to taking care of basic household needs. Now, to some extent, we could write this off as, oh, they just weren't raised to do that. And that may or may not be true. But given that we're just wrapping up this whole series on digital distraction, you got to wonder, how much does that have to do with it? And that's kind of the focus of this episode, is what is the relationship between digital distraction and this man-keeping complaint? Tom writes, gaming is just a hobby. It's how I connect to my friends from college. What's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with that. The truth is, there's nothing wrong with hobbies. The truth is, there's nothing wrong with connecting with your friends. And again, 80% of men are spending 7 to 20 hours per week on screens. And the other thing is, let's break it down. What is a hobby meant to be? A hobby is meant to be a pursuit that develops us personally. It's meant to be a creative expression of self, a way to engage ourselves, a way to find fulfillment. The original idea of hobby came out in the context of, let's call it a blue-collar mindset, right? The blue-collar mindset is, I'm going to work 40 hours a week from now for 20 years, 25 years, until I'm 60, 65, 70. And then when I retire, I'm going to do what I really want to do. So the blue-collar mindset is, I'm going to trade a certain amount of time for a certain period of my life doing something that I don't really love. It may not be that painful for me, but it's not something that I really love. It's not something that's really fulfilling. And then when I retire, I'm going to do what I really want. And what do people do while they're doing something that doesn't really fulfill them? They find fulfillment in other activities. And that's what a hobby is meant to be, whether it be flying drones, model airplane assembly, gardening, construction, knitting, sewing, painting houses, painting pictures, sculpting, whatever it is, it's meant to be something that draws on our innate abilities and our natural skills and develops us. And can we honestly argue that gaming develops ourselves? Yes, gaming develops ourselves up to a point. It develops our rapid response rate. It develops the part of our brain that's into action. It develops our goal-oriented nature. That may be part of why men are so much drawn to this than women. Women do game, but the studies show that women they let go of gaming maybe in their 30s. We'll talk about that more in a second. There is some development that happens with gaming, but there's a limit to it. It's not like carpentry, where the more you do it, the better you get at it. In fact, what happens is with gaming is we hit the peak of our ability within a certain construct of gaming, and then we go to a new one, and then we transfer those skills from one game to the next. It also depends on what kind of game. There were in the beginning of gaming history, there were games that were more puzzle oriented and less action oriented, and those seem to be less and less, and the action more and more. And we'll talk about that more in a second. So Abigail writes, "My husband is amazing online. He's witty. He's charming. But in day-to-day life, he's less present." And this goes back to the second part of the previous quote. We talked about the hobby part, but we didn't really talk about connecting with friends. More and more people have been seeking connection through online means. It's probably partially an outgrowth of the pandemic, where the only way we connected with people for a long time was online. But it's also, there's guys traditionally have trouble connecting with other guys, except when they're doing something with them. For example, if you have an adolescent son, it is easier to talk to your adolescent son if you're driving somewhere together or in an activity together. Gaming helps with that. Guys can meet in a gaming room virtually and focus on one goal together and reconnect. But how much intimate contact is there? And by intimate, I mean emotional sharing. How much real exposure of who you are in that is happening in that moment? It is very different than in person. And the tendency over the last, call it 10 years, not just for men, but to some extent for women as well, has been to fall more and more into virtual connection and less into real life connection. Now, focusing on men and man keeping, what we have here is sort of the perfect man trap. We've got the game, which is goal oriented. And in previous episodes of Rich in Relationship, we've talked all about how men are goal machines. And as a result, they tend to hang out on one side or the other, and they tend to be more linear and more goal-oriented. Women have more connections between the two lobes, so they move back and forth from creative to rational. And as a result, they are also more emotionally aware and more concerned about their immediate environment. Men, much easier for us to sink ourselves into a project, whether it be a hobby, whether it be work that we really love and that is fulfilling to us, or a digital distraction like games. Games are the perfect mind trap for the genetically, chromosomally male brain. Perfect. And when you add to it that we have a lower level form of connection, not only do we get to play games and be distracted from day-to-day life, from our concerns, from our stresses, from the challenges of life, but we get validated through connection to our peers. We feel like we're hanging out with our friends, even though we're not truly connecting if we had gone out together to watch a football game. Football, perfectly reasonable form of distraction. In person, very different experience. So the question is gaming in its current form, when we take it into later life, is it a form of delayed adulthood? Are we extending our adolescence through this gaming experience? Is there a time when we need to lessen our focus on gaming or even end it? I think that's extreme, by the way. Unless you're talking about gaming addiction, that I don't know much about that. We might be talking about managing our gaming experience. But when gaming distracts us from our partnership, distracts us from our family, when we are not feeling as fulfilled in life as we could be, and we turn more and more to gaming for connection, a sense of connection, false sense of connection, less fulfilling than face-to-face connection. When we turn to gaming to have a hit of dopamine because we're winning at something, maybe not winning at our job, maybe not winning at our marriage, maybe not winning as fathers, then something's not working. Because, my friends, we were not born on this earth to live digitally. We were born on this earth to develop and grow as human beings, to take all the potential that we are and expand it. And I'm not telling you, oh, you're living below your potential, because we've all heard that one so many times it makes it. We're all living below our potential. The question is, how much are you embracing the fun that is development of self? And it is fun if you wrap your mind around it, if you direct yourself on it. But I digress. All right, so back to men versus women. For some reason, women tend to reduce their gaming in their 30s. What's the difference between men and women here? The difference is that women are more environmentally, ecologically, emotionally aware. If a man and a woman have children together, that's going to put a demand emotionally on the woman that then will not be the same for the man. The reason being that women read emotion in terms of body language and microexpression far better than men. They're unconsciously competent at reading emotion in the room. They have better peripheral vision than men. They have better awareness of what the emotions are around them. The fact of the matter is that women read the room better than men. Men can learn to read the room well, but we will probably not read the room as well as a woman. And what happens for a woman when they're in their 30s is they find in order to compete in the work world, they take that ability to read the room and apply it in a goal-oriented way. And fellas, I don't know if you've noticed, but they're kicking our butts out there right now. And that's a good thing. All right. Women have done a much better job of taking their ecological, environmental, emotional awareness and applying it to competing in the work world than men have. Because let's face it, the world was structured by men. It's a very goal-oriented world. We had it easy. What we need to be doing, if we want to have an empowered partnership with our wives, is we need to be developing our environmental, ecological, emotional awareness of ourselves and of others. I promise you that if you inventoried your emotional state, you would find that you get a bigger bang when you are successful at work or successful with your children or successful with your wife than you do out of gaming. So what is the draw of gaming? The draw of gaming is that in the short term, we hit the goal. In the short term, we're winning. In the short term, the stress is manageable and mostly expected. Whereas in real life, stressors can be unexpected. In real life, the economy can suddenly change and be beyond our control. In real life, maybe a president goes into office that you didn't vote for and you're not excited about. In real life, maybe your boss changes and you can't control that. In real life, maybe you're driving and somebody hits your car and there's nothing you can do about it. In a game, if somebody hits your car, what do? Depending on the game, you shoot them, you run them off the road, you get immediate expression of aggression. In real life, you can't do that. Or you can, but it'll get you locked up. And so we start to see that the more we game, the more immediate gratification we get, and there's a tendency to withdraw from our real life, day-to-day activities. Joe writes, she says I make her feel like my mom. I'm just trying to avoid an argument, that's all. Yeah, Joe, that's the happy wife, happy life syndrome. And we've done episodes on what a myth that is. And the truth is that in the short term, you may make your wife happier by ducking and avoiding arguments. But in the long run, she's going to start to feel like she's your mama. And you do not want your wife feeling like she's your mama. It's not good for your day-to-day life. It's not good for your intimate life. It's not good for your relationship in any way. In today's world, when our wife starts to feel like our mother, when our wife starts to feel like she's carrying most of the load and we're off having a good time, they leave us. First, they check out emotionally. Then they check out physically. Maybe they find someone else who can connect with them. Maybe they get divorced. Maybe they separate from you. In real life, those of us who are gaming more have less emotional bandwidth and are connecting less with our partners. Digital escape is definitely a form of tension management. Everybody does it. If you've got a smartphone, and pretty much everyone does unless they choose to have a dumb phone, you're going to escape digitally from time to time. As we explored in the last series, the question is, are you consciously checking out or are you unconsciously checking out? If you are checking out habitually, then the chances are it's becoming unconscious. What is the difference? I want you to think about screens as alcohol. When we consciously go to a cocktail party and have a beer, half a beer, beer and a half, 2 beers, and we decide that we're not going to have any more because we really want to be present to the people that we're in the room with, we're being very conscious. When we go to a party and we unconsciously are drinking beer, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe we're doing shots, maybe where we stop thinking about the other people in the room, our whole unconscious mind is focused on the feeling of the alcohol. What's happening is we become unconsciously addicted. And that's what's happening with a lot of us when it comes to screens. We're becoming unconsciously addicted. I want to remind you that social media is designed to unconsciously addict us. I want to remind you that what you see on the different platforms, the shows and movies that you see, are designed to be unconsciously addictive. The reason why there's been such a rise in violence and sexuality in screens is because it's what addicts us unconsciously. It's what gets our limbic system going. The reason why we check our email incessantly, respond to text messages the second they come up, is because we're unconsciously addicted to the dopamine hit of responding and replying. The reason why we game 7 to 20 hours a week, that's a lot of hours, is because we've become unconsciously hooked on the dopamine hit that comes with every small victory, with the false sense of connection. Connection is vital for human beings, with the disconnection from our real life stressors. And so I'm asking you to make a choice. Guys, why am I not talking to women? Because women, because of their ecological awareness, balance better. I'm challenging you guys, and women who are listening, I'm challenging you to share this episode with your men and bring it up with them. I'm challenging you to draw a line. Don't keeping, draw the line. And on one side of the line is the behavior that's been going on. And on the other side of the line is closing the gap in your marriage, closing the gap between fantasy life and real life, closing the gap between real fulfillment and short-term gratification, closing the gap between working hard as something that has little personal development and little personal fulfillment to something that is more developmental and big picture enjoyable and may evolve into something that we might even do wide scale sometime in our life, either when we retire or maybe we'll do it for a living. Right? I haven't even talked about why would anyone ever retire, right? By the way, if you were living a life where you were perfectly fulfilled in your work, you wanted to go to work, why would you retire? I want you to know I love what I do. I love helping people drop their negative dynamic and focus on a relationship that creates synergy in their marriage, where they get more done together than they ever imagined, where they enjoy life together, where when they have a difference of opinion, it becomes an opportunity for something better for both of them instead of a big knockdown, drag out fight that might end the marriage. I love doing that. It is so incredibly fulfilling. I cannot imagine retiring from that. I can imagine doing less of it as I hit my 80s and I don't have the juice that I used to, but I can't imagine not doing it. I love doing this podcast. I love doing these topics. I can't see retirement. Imagine if you were doing that instead of gaming and social media. And I'm going to tell you that part of what's gotten me here is a combination. First, there needs to be a new goal in your marriage. Whether you're a gaming man or a man-keeping woman, there needs to be a new goal in the marriage. The goal needs to be, it's a win-win. Not I'm winning, they're losing, not I'm losing, they're winning, but we're going to make this a win-win experience. That does not mean getting rid of gaming, by the way. It just means putting it in its place. Doesn't mean not watching screens. It just means using them to build us up instead of to escape. And the second part is, obviously, we're going to get super conscious about how and when we use our screens, right? We've got a win-win goal. We know that those screens are distracting us. Ladies, I promise you, you've got some screen addiction going on too. It's pretty rare in this society that it's just the guys. But we're going to reduce and manage our screens so that it supports us individually and supports our marriage. Keep those screens away from your kids. That's a whole nother episode. It reduces the development of the brain. It reduces the development of the parts of the brain that are most important for effective marriages and for success in life. 3, we're going to develop some new positive habits to replace the maybe less positive habit of 7 to 20 hours of screen time. And 4, we're going to understand the challenge. And the challenge is that we're going to develop, guys, we're going to develop our emotional awareness. We're going to develop our personal fulfillment. Get that the relationship, the marriage, supports our personal fulfillment. So if we feed into the marriage, it feeds into our personal fulfillment. I'm not talking necessarily about her. I'm talking about the marriage. When you both invest in the relationship supports you both in growing individually. That's the new goal. Going to take that goal-oriented nature that we put in our games and we're going to put it into our marriage. And making that the primary goal, if you focus on that goal like you've been focusing on those games, you cannot fail. The next series is going to be all about man-keeping. Ladies, if you feel like you've been man-keeping, the chances are you think you're better and stronger than he is. Well, you're not. I want you to start looking at him as maybe being a little off his game, and you're going to help him get on it. We're going to do a whole series on what is man-keeping really. And maybe there's been a version of man-keeping that men did for a while called woman-keeping, maybe. What does that mean? What are the differences, right? If man-keeping right now is focused on the weakness of men and the strength of women. And I'm all for the strength of women. But when we lift ourselves up at the expense of another gender, it doesn't work. Women, you know that, right? That for thousands of years, men have lifted themselves up at the expense of women. Your challenge is to not only seek equality, but maintain equality. If you seek equality at the expense of your partner, you are no longer equal. You're better than. So we're going to explore man-keeping. In what ways is it real? In what ways is it a kind of better than? Stay tuned for this coming series on man-keeping. And I'd be remiss if I didn't offer you some tools. We have got a ton of tools for you on richinrelationship.com. We got a new free membership area. Go there and register in the free membership area and get thousands of dollars worth of benefits just because we want your marriage to work. We want you to be happy. And with that, I'm going to close out. I'm going to say, have an amazing day and a fantastic tomorrow.